This is our family and our legacy. Let's come together, y'all. Let's come together. We'll build our story with our ancestors' words. Let your legacy always be loved. Let your voice always be heard.
There are moments when history stops feeling like the past. When a name, a story, or a photograph opens a door to who we really are. In this episode of Our Family, Our Legacy, I sit with my cousin, author, and historian, Renee Sherry Frazier, as we explore her powerful new book, Our Legacy, The Parkers of Maryland, Their Stories, Volume 2. This isn't just a collection of dates and family names. It's a testament to freedom, hard-won, to heritage reclaimed, and to the love that carries across generations. So take a moment, breathe it in, and join us as we honor the Parker family and the enduring spirit that reminds us. Our legacy is not behind us. It's alive in every story we tell. Welcome, family, to another episode of Our Family, Our Legacy. I'm Charles Ellis, and I'm joined today with my cousin Sherry, who has written another volume 2 of her book. It's entitled Our Legacy, The Parkers of Maryland, Their Stories, Volume 2. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. I've had an opportunity to review the book, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Lots of information, lots of history, and I'm going to say right out front, everybody, every family member should get a copy of this book and read it. It is a good read. It's an easy read, as these history books are very difficult sometimes. But this one is very, very easy. Welcome, Sherry.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, cuz. Thank you, cuz.
Thank you so much for doing this. We have a lot of questions and a lot to get to today in relationship to that. So let's just get
Excellent.
right to it. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. So the first thing I want us to talk about, and I love the cover, by the way. What motivated you to write Volume 2? After that first book? And you were the first person on this podcast to talk about that first volume. So what motivated you to write Volume 2?
So first of all, you said to me, you got to do another volume after I did the first one. So you were the first person that made me think about even doing another book. As usual, you are a motivator, gave me the idea. And I started to think, as you said, there are more stories to tell. I wanted to find some additional information, dig deeper, find some relevant experiences that people would have interest in. In the first book, I talked about Oliver in the Civil War, and it started to make me think, well, what other people fought in the Civil War? Never thought quite candidly that our ancestors fought in the Civil War. Logical, right? You see about other people, but not about your people. So this digging deeper was really important to me. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about them as people, their lives, understand them more. That's why this book is more about specific stories, not as much about genealogy. The genealogy was in the first book, so we really know where we came from. And I think the other thing, I wanted to make sure the family understood the notion of the struggle. When you and I were coming up, we talked about this term, the struggle. And it's a term that's used in our families, and it's normally speaking to before civil rights, but I don't think we really think about the struggle in slavery. The closest thing to that probably was roots. We saw roots. And finally, when I finally wrote the second book, I said, well, this would be a great fundraiser. Our graveyards, we have 2 graveyards, up in Cooksville. You and I went to both of them, and they're struggling with keeping them afloat. So I've been writing the books, no money for me. I invest my money and I encourage the family. I sell them and I give all the proceeds to the graveyards. So that's what the books are. The first set of books, I didn't make any money even, you know that. But it wasn't a fundraiser. But I've been very clear that this Parker book, there was a recent, Charles, there was a recent reunion, I think, kind of motivated by the books and what we've been doing with all of our family and what you've been doing, quite candidly. And there was a Dorsey Parker Cook reunion that I went to about 2 weeks ago. And I did sell about 25 books, and I raised about $200 per graveyard with those sales.
Oh, that's great.
It was kind of
really,
nice.
really great.
So that's been my goal at this point is, yep, I'm motivated to do it. I like it, the digging deeper, learning more, and understanding history from our family, our grandparents, their involvement as individuals in history. So that's
Mm-hmm.
been really good for me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's a very, very, very important work. One of the things I notice about the book is that you connect family stories to national politics.
Ah.
Why is that important,
Well, you can't, I
especially
mean,
now?
I can't ignore the dynamic of what's going on today. The conversation around what Donald Trump is doing to dismantle so much of what specifically our ancestors have achieved. So we got to live in the here and now. We really do. We have to live in the here and now. Like you did, like you said, today is No King Day. I didn't get out there because there's so much presence right now in Memphis with National Guard. It's pretty intimidating right now in blue cities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this political climate, we can't ignore it. We just can't ignore it. I never thought, Charles, in my lifetime, I'd see this type of backwards movement into racism and negative actions to really impact the development and struggle and the success of our ancestors. So I just think it's so relevant. I can't ignore it. I had to include conversation about, and this is why I put these social media posts in the back. I start the front of the book with a saying from Martin Luther King that I feel
Mm-hmm.
real strong about. I
Mm-hmm.
end the book with a saying from Malcolm X because they had two different approaches, but they had the same goal. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Their
Mm-hmm.
approaches were different. And my goodness, I hate to say it, given the bully that Donald Trump is, we could use a Malcolm X today. I
Mm.
mean, the reality is we really could because he's such a bully. We would need someone that believed in being dealing with a bully because he is a bully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that saying in the front from Martin, I think, is what carried us through the civil rights movement. But what Malcolm said at the end is probably what we need today
Mm-hmm.
to try to move forward on where we are. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the political piece was, it's because this book is not really as much ancestry tracing, and this is about stories. Right now, this is a story that we got to make sure we understand is the here and now. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very important. Very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, we need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice.
Yeah,
Not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. That is
yeah.
beautiful. That is
That's
beautiful.
Malcolm. That's. I mean, that's Martin.
Martin. That's Martin.
That's
Mm.
that's Martin. He was
Yeah.
he was clear about that. And what we clearly have today is people have sold out. It's all about money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
everybody is transactional. If I can make money on it, humanity doesn't matter. Integrity doesn't matter. I never thought I'd see a day like that in America, but that's
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So the book for me is I had to make some kind of political. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on
Mm-hmm.
discussing Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want him to distract from what's important in the book, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted people to understand this is the time that I'm living in today. So when somebody picks this book up, hopefully 20 years from now, and I'm gone,
Yeah.
they'll say, man, she was living during the time of Donald Trump.
Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. So let's get into the family narrative a little bit.
Mhm. Mm.
Again, I really love the connection, though. I mean, I really think it's very,
Great
very relevant
connections.
and very, very powerful. Everybody should read it. So, Sherry, which ancestor's story has stayed with you the most while you were with this book?
Well, the first one about the MIT graduate that have Lincoln Park, I never
Mm-hmm.
even fathomed that we had a family member that went through college,
Mm-hmm.
let alone MIT, and also was recognized as someone who was one of the leading architects on the entire subway system in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine as a young girl knowing that if we knew that, how that would have been inspiring to us? We
Sure.
never knew it. Hidden story, hidden story. I found it kind of accidentally, but I found it. And Lincoln Parker, Joseph A. Parker's son, that's a big deal. And he went to MIT at a time when it was a lot of segregation. And from what I understand, they were selecting Black people to go to some select colleges that they families could pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to pass for white. And I suspect that he was very fair skinned, had very nice hair, and he probably was able to pass for white. And they could never identify that they were in fact quote, Negroes.
Mm,
So that's the environment he was in, but that was amazing that he made that achievement. The other piece that really struck me, his story was really, because I just never imagined it. I never imagined it. I knew our family were predominantly farmers and entrepreneurs and blue collar workers. Had no idea he had somebody that graduated from MIT and was so instrumental in the development of the New York subway system. That's pretty powerful. The other
mm,
piece that I learned that was really amazing was the connection to the Howard family, which was a very wealthy family. There's a museum that talks about the development of Montgomery County. Now, my book doesn't talk a lot about this because I didn't know about it. But evidently, we had a lot of family members who were in the Montgomery County area. There is a museum there, and that area was developed by Quakers. And that may answer the question in the book that I have of why were so many Al Parker family members free? Al Parker memory families were free since 1790. Dennis was free. Eliza was free. And they were described with as yellow. They were with yellow, light skin, yellow skin, and long black hair. So they
wow.
weren't totally African. That's how they described in the book. And that's why I have them on the free papers. It describes them. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the story of Joseph Parker, Lincoln Parker, was very amazing to me. And the Howard family, and the Howard family were individuals with money. Joseph Parker married a Howard, and they were wealthy mixed race people who eventually helped start the Afro and also were very influential in the politics of Baltimore City. So pretty interesting. Bill Gaither was the slave owner. The other thing I've learned in almost all these stories is because our family is predominantly very light, fair skin, different. Our eyes are green and that kind of thing. The
Mm-hmm.
association. I knew we had European connection, but really seeing the actual slave owners, I've been able to trace back to the slave masters who enslaved some of our family. And clearly we have features of their DNA because they were European. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no question now. That's always been discussed, but now it's clear. It's clear now. It's very clear. And then, of course, the first book, we were able to validate that with Frank Cook because we were able to do some DNA matching with Frank Cook, who was the slave son of Thomas Cook. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very clear now. Our story is very clear. And this connection to Joseph Parker was a wonderful thing for me to learn about. And the Howards, who had money, they were mixed race people of color, and they did very well. They did very well.
I want to make sure that we put everything into a context that everybody can understand in relationship to that. That's some very powerful information, and people really should be empowered by listening to that. Now, Lila was a cook. Lila, our grandmother,
Mother,
was a
correct.
cook.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Talk about how the Parker piece comes into view in relationship to
Well,
us.
her mother was a Parker.
Our mother was a
Her mother
Parker.
was a Parker.
Got you. Okay.
The Parkers and Cooks were connected through plantation. They worked on the same plantations, either in Montgomery County or in Howard County. But
Mm-hmm.
her mother was Clara Parker, and Clara Parker married a cook, and
Okay.
that's the connection. Pretty
Okay.
simple.
Pretty simple.
And
Pretty
they
simple.
were together on these plantations, which over the years they tried to make us think they were farms, but they were huge plantations. And they walked. It's amazing to me how they connected because there was clearly a strong connection between the Howard County community of African enslaved people and the Montgomery County community. And that's about a 30-minute ride in a car today because I just did that ride. So can you imagine what it was with for walking with no street signs, no roads? They walked there and they worked between those locations. And there was a
Wow.
strong connections between the Parkers and the Howards because some
Mm-hmm.
they married.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we have a Howard family member buried at the Parker Cemetery.
Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah. And
Okay.
that's why I'm into cemeteries. I always learn something new when I go to a cemetery, one of our
Mm-hmm.
cemeteries. I always learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
But yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Lala's mother was a Parker.
Okay. You mentioned the free papers. Can you talk of about the discovery of the free papers and what that moment felt like for you and for our family? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Emotional. Um, I've
Mm-hmm.
always heard about it, never saw it. Seeing these papers that were written in hand, written that our ancestors were. What I liked about them, it told us a little bit about what they look like. That I liked about it. Um, it was a bit demeaning to know that they had to carry these notes around, grown people,
Mm-hmm.
to say, "I'm free. Don't mess with me."
Right.
I'm free.
Right.
I got a paper. And the other thing I learned about these papers, they're actually they were in a big book. They're not little separate little licenses like a driver's license. You have to carry this whole book of papers around with you and show them your name on there. So it was emotional. I'm glad I got to see them, and that's why I put them in the book. I don't think people have any concept of what they look like. I didn't either. I thought you had like a certificate or a driver's license, but it was a list of multiple people on pages that were so-called considered free or freeborn. And even if you were freeborn, you still had to carry your papers.
Wow.
Very demeaning.
Very demeaning. Very demeaning.
And I put them in the book because it's authentic. I wanted people to see it, handwritten. Didn't it's very authentic, and
Mm-hmm.
people were stunned by what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was emotional. Believe me, it was emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it.
It was. It
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Um, you document Cherokee and other Native ancestry. How did you
Hmm.
uncover those stories, and how do you
Oh
think
my
they shape
God.
our identity today?
I have a lot of ways I discovered it. Part of the internet is amazing. I have
Mm-hmm.
a very good friend, Arian Swan, who was a friend of my mother. And I don't know if you know Arian. She looks white and they're white, but she's Native American. She's 100% Native American. And I had an ancestor we've always heard this. When I saw Eliza and Dennis's free papers and said they were yellow complexion with long black hair, I said, well, that's not African. So I have an ancestor a relative who just passed, who said his 23andMe sample came back about 24% Native American, not knowing which tribe, by the way. And then I started digging into information on the internet and learned a lot. That book that I did, I learned so much. It's probably an overkill
Mm-hmm.
about the whole process of being considered Native American, how complex it is. Cherokee would be most likely, and I found documentation with many, many Parkers that were named. And the questions become, we always thought Parkers were only in Maryland. Just recently, Ancestry updated my analysis of my DNA. And you know what it shows? It shows the Parkers migrated out of Massachusetts, potentially, which was where the original Parkers were from England, into Maryland, into Mississippi, into Oklahoma. So partners were all over. They were all over. And they moved around. And they could have moved around with Native American tribes because they were freedmen in Native American tribes. But
Mm-hmm.
I just started digging into this. I read a book about it. I started learning information about the doll census. So that book, if you really want to understand whether or not we have Native American DNA, that book is the book to read. My conclusion is I think we have Native American DNA. We do not have any Native American citizenship. And those
Mm-hmm.
are two different things. And that's what that book will explain to you, the difference between citizenship and DNA.
Mm-hmm.
No question. But it
Mm-hmm.
really started with a bunch of conversations because of the free papers made me think about it. My conversation with Arian Swan, my conversation with one of my relatives, who was a Parker who just passed away,
Mm-hmm.
Omar, he just passed away. And no question that book really provides you enough information to say, if we're not Native American, it's because it's been held away from us, it's been kept away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are, we probably would have to research some documentation to prove citizenship. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I pretty much leave it like that in the book. But I'm convinced we
Okay.
have it in the blood. I'm convinced of it. We just
Yeah.
are not considered Native American citizens.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That's some powerful stuff. I want to read something from the preface,
Mm.
because in the preface you mentioned some current events like Supreme Court decisions, and basically, let me just read this for us. And it basically states the most concerning issue has been the role of the current United States Supreme Court. 6 justices continue to disregard the United States Constitution and have, unfortunately, ruled in favor of the Trump administration. Trump administration policies are pushing his agenda towards becoming America's first dictator. The recent passing of the Trump so-called Big Beautiful Bill of 2025 has been evaluated as placing our country under extreme fiscal and social constraints. I mean, I could go on with that, but that is something very, very, I think, powerful. How do
Mhm.
you see genealogy as part of civic engagement or resistance?
Well, I'd stay on my webpage saying resistance constantly, and I think people have to resist in the way they feel comfortable. Some people march, some people constantly document information and make it available, which is part of what I do. Information is powerful. That's why we were kept for so many years. We were not allowed to be educated because if you're educated and you have information, you can make decisions. It just
Mm-hmm.
gives you too much power. So I think that for me, I think explaining to people how it fits into the past. I know we say, well, know your history, you won't repeat it. The reality is, if we know real history, we won't repeat it. Or if we do see it coming again, we'll understand what we need to do about it. So I think the social media post was my way of using something that people understand. I'm not the only person saying this. This is being said across the country. Um, People are making comments that hate and racism and this white supremacist ideology is something that has come back, that probably never left, and
Mm-hmm.
that we need to resist it. So I think genealogy is important because you got to understand there's been a path. There was a path that was developed over time, and that path is being rewalked again. And we need to understand that that's what's happening and what we need to do about it.
You know, one of the things that I noticed, and I was in communication with um, my brother-in-law Al up in Nevada as I was on the line in the rally. Didn't notice a lot of young folk. He didn't notice a lot of young folk. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people our age out there, you know, towing the line. How do you hope younger family members use your work?
Well, I think I have had conversations with younger family members, and
Mm-hmm.
they read it, they call me, they ask questions. I do my best to help them gain more knowledge. I try to help them use the information to be more intentional about how they create opportunities for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I really encourage them. I'm not ashamed to say vote blue. I really encourage them. I have at least one family member who voted Republican, which I'm still struggling with, who
Mm-hmm.
voted for Obama twice, young man under 40, who voted
Mm.
for Obama twice, but voted for Donald Trump. So, I mean, I'm having these conversations trying to show the historical relevance to what's going on today and how our ancestors, through the understanding of your genealogy of what this meant for them and what this could mean for us today. So I try to create the connection. And I have quite a few conversations, quite a few. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a struggle. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle.
Mm. Yeah.
They say seeing is believing. They're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it and they still can't believe it.
Mm.
Seeing is believing, but they're seeing it and they still can't believe it.
Yeah.
So the conversation about yesterday is trying to let them understand, believe it. Believe it, because it happened. And it didn't happen in a book about someone you didn't know. It happened to your ancestor, Parker, Joseph, Charles, Oliver, real people, your people. Seeing is believing, and it's your people. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
always successful, but I try.
well, I think you're doing it. I think you're doing it. People need to pick up the book. They need to read it. They need to resonate with that idea that this whole administration is taking you back to 1675 to 1765 and on and on, and it's frightening for people. And I know that people perhaps, like you said, doesn't feel or think it's going to happen to us, and it is certainly happening. Family history, as we uncover it, there's some painful truths, just like the one you just laid out: enslavement, loss, exclusion, How do you balance truth telling with healing in this writing?
I don't think I think about healing as part of what I'm able to do. Quite honestly, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. You are the therapist in the family. I'm probably not in that healing set, but I am in the mindset of, as I go through this and I produce this information, it has become powerful. It's empowering me. I feel so empowered by knowing this information and that I can actually communicate it to the family. Going back to a first generation Parker in 1765 was empowering to me. I never
Mm-hmm.
thought I could do that because all that information has been kept from us. They don't want us to be able to go back and be empowered by the success or the, even though we have all these challenges, look at what they came overcome so we could be where we are today. We just can't forget that. So this empowerment is what I focus on in my conversation. I'm really not able to, I think, address the healing piece, but the empowerment of knowing information like this that goes back so far, that was so, has been, trying to keep it from, like, trying to get back to the slave ships is my ultimate goal. If I don't know Joseph Parker's parents. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I want to be empowered because I want to be able to go back because I know that information was meant for us to never know it. So
Mm.
that's why I feel so empowered when I do that. So healing, maybe not, but empowerment, absolutely. I think the thing that I find most common that comes out of these conversations is people who learn about their connection to maybe a father's DNA that they didn't know. This notion of who's your daddy.
Mm.
That's been a little interesting. A lot of more of that than I expected. People who were we used to call them illegitimate children or
Mm-hmm.
children outside of marriage. Henry Gates calls it natural had a baby, a natural baby. But I've actually been surprised how much of that exists and how painful that's been for the individuals I've talked to about it. I've not spent a lot of time on it in my book. I really don't think that's what my book is about. I'm on calls with people, maybe 90 minutes, just trying to understand that they're associated with a family member because of a, maybe someone had a child with a, unfortunately, maybe even another family member, potentially in some circumstances. But that notion of understanding some of that pain is something I do deal with, but I don't deal with it that much in the book itself. But it's
Mm-hmm.
there because I've discovered it. But that's never been my goal. But I have discovered some of those very personal circumstances of children that were born not with their father, but with someone else outside of their quote father or their mother's husband. Not
Mm-hmm.
to mention the realization of all the different slave owner related children that we have as well. So it is something that's there. I probably haven't dealt with it from my storytelling, but I'm hoping I empower people to know about it and to understand that it is part of their story and that they now know it.
And that alone, I think, can be very, very healing, comforting,
Hmm.
balancing,
Hmm.
grounding.
Hmm. Hmm.
Truth and knowledge is
Hmm.
power
Right. Knowledge is power.
in and of itself. And when you know where you have come from and you know who you are connected with, it does give you a sense of groundedness and power and a sense that you belong, right? A
And
sense that you
we've
belong.
encountered it, and we've
Yeah,
encountered it, and we've
yeah.
been able to embrace it within our own family. And
Hmm.
it's a challenge. It's
It
something
is.
that but like I said, I don't cover it much in the book, but it's there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's something that I do talk to people about individually.
Yeah, we got a few minutes left. You include gravestones, maps, family trees. What role do these artifacts play in the making history real for this?
And authentic. People love it when they see that authentic materials,
Hmm.
gravestones, headstones, they love it. It resonates with them.
Hmm.
I think the graveyard is important to me because names are there and they'll never go away, even though eventually they can go away over time because of
Hmm.
bad weather. But people People like it. They like to see that it's authentic. So I think that's why I do the maps and the gravestones. Then the maps try to create a picture that's clearer. People can see the clear pickle, Uncle Bob, Uncle Han. And the thing with these maps to give real names because we have so many nicknames everywhere.
Yeah,
So to have maps there so people can visually see the geography of the country, being authentic. I'm trying to simplify what's in the book. That's why I do it.
beautiful work. Beautiful, beautiful work. All right. So, with the few minutes that we have left,
Hmm.
what can other family members learn from the Parker story? What would you like for them to take away from this? What can they learn
It's
from the
not one
Parker story?
story. It is not one story. I can tell you that. There are
Yeah.
various stories in there. And you know what I've learned is that that story resonates with multiple different families that I've talked to about some of the just Civil War, people
Mm-hmm.
dying in Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me was the story about our ancestors who served less than a year and they were killed in the Civil War. I found out that you could serve up to the age 45 with an ancestor who went at 42 years old and died at 43, was killed at 43.
Mm-hmm.
I think those stories about our ancestors and their sacrifice to me is very important. And I'm glad that I was able to put those type of stories in there. I think the other thing is the difference between Parkers and Cooks. It struck me in doing this book and doing the first book is that the Cooks really made a decision to go to the big city and create a different type of life through, working for someone else, labor,
Mm-hmm.
blue collar workers, whereas the Parkers stayed entrepreneurial, true to the entrepreneurial spirit and ran businesses. So I think those stories are important to motivate people in the family to make multiple choices. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
make multiple. You can be an entrepreneur. You can go make money and work for somebody else. So I think that notion of these stories about these multiple choices, I thought were important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my final message, and I keep saying that, our family legacy matters. And who we are today is only a small part of what we can be tomorrow. I really believe that it matters that we understand the legacy. It matters that who we are today, and it matters that we really are more intentional about who we are tomorrow. That's what I'm concerned about our young people. I don't think they're being intentional enough about tomorrow. They're just not, they're transactional. Everything's today, internet, you know, Instagram. They're not
Yeah.
thinking about what's beyond that. What's tomorrow going to look like? And that the struggle of our ancestors and to be our ancestors struggle, but be inspired. This book, I want to inspire. That's why I end with inspiring something
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X. I want them to be inspired. So, I mean, that's kind of the big picture of when I look at as I put it all together. You know, legacy, be inspired, be
Yeah.
intentional, think
Mm-hmm.
about tomorrow.
Okay. That's one last question.
Hmm.
If there was one sentence you would want listeners to carry with them from this podcast, from your work, what would it be?
Our family matters and be empowered.
Our family matters
And be empowered.
and be empowered. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thought. Our family matters and be
And be
empowered.
empowered. You got to be empowered.
You got to be empowered. Thank you so much, my cousin. And I really,
Always
really
a pleasure.
appreciate this. This
Always
is
a pleasure.
always a pleasure. And thank you so much for doing this wonderful, wonderful work. I'm going to continue to
And thank
encourage
you for
people.
doing your wonderful, wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But that does it for us. Thank you all for listening. And please go out and purchase the book because it is definitely a good read. It's very informative, but it also serves a wonderful purpose and a good cause. So with that, thank you for joining Our Family, Our Legacy. And remember this, let your legacy always be love and let your voice always be heard. Thank you so very much. And again, thank you so much, Cousin Sherry.
Thank you, sweetie.
Peace. What Renee has given us is more than a book. It's a mirror to our shared humanity and a bridge between generations. Her work reminds us that the greatest monuments we can build are not of stone or steel, but of memory, truth, and love. May this conversation inspire you to learn your own story, to speak it loud, and to pass it on. Until next time, let your legacy always be love and your voice always be heard. Peace.
This is our family and our legacy. Let's come together, y'all. Let's come together. We'll build our story with our ancestors' words. Let your legacy always be love. Let your voice always be heard.